Cedar Falls Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for this Wednesday, December.
Turn your mic on, please.
2019. Ms. Howard, do we have the roll?
Yes, good evening. Atkins? Hartley? Holst?
Here.
Larson?
Here.
Leeper? Lynch?
Here.
Prideaux?
Here.
Saul?
Here.
Wingert?
Here.
Note that Hartley and Leeper are absent. I believe Mr. Leeper will be joining us tonight, but perhaps it's just a bit late.
Thank you very much. Our first item of business is approval of the minutes from the November 20th, 2019 meeting, or any corrections. Do I have a motion? Or
I would move to approve.
been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
That motion carries. At this time, I would open the floor here to anybody in the audience who would like to address the commission with any public comments that aren't related to an item that's on the agenda tonight. If there's anyone who would like. Seeing none, we'll move on from the public comments and on to the old business calendar. And our first item of business is a preliminary plat and final plat for the Green Hill Villages Estates. And Mr. Sturch, you're going to introduce this.
Thank you, Mr. Holtz. We presented this preliminary and final plat at the last meeting on November 20th. And I want to bring together both a preliminary and final plat up for consideration at this time. So normally we look at preliminary at one time and a final at the other, but since these are similar, it's a one-lot subdivision with some public improvements. It's not a phased approach. So again, we're looking at preliminary and final plat at this time, located in the Green Hill Village area near the, I would say, the northwest corner of Ashworth Drive and Algonquin, along the west side of Algonquin. It's a roughly 8.5 acre parcel. Moving along with the plat itself, again, it's a one lot, 8.66 acres. Tract A is along the north side as you look at the left side of the image up there. So Tract A is a 350-foot extension, which will be a Lauren Drive off the west side of Algonquin to run to the limits of that plat along the westerly side. The lot will accommodate a new senior living retirement center. There's a 24-foot wide access easement along the south and west side, which will provide access to the driveway and parking area for the proposed development. And along with that, you got utility easements typically along the street edge or the frontage of the lots and along that south side and west side of that access easement. With the shaded area along the west and south side of the property, that's all encompasses a stormwater management area, the stormwater easement, which I'll explain in a little more detail. The existing contours or the flow of the stormwater and the runoff through this site is uncontrolled. It kind of is released through a pipe along the west side of the property, which there's a storm sewer that runs between a couple of houses on Addison Drive there. That's connected to the storm sewer system. So it empties into this lot, flows in the southeasterly direction to a basin down at in intakes and pipe on Ashworth Drive, and that actually flows into the area-wide detention basin there, as you can see right there at the corner of the area. So that's kind of the existing conditions. It's overland, it's uncontrolled, and then as the development occurs, we're going to take a look at that. So with that, this is kind of a layout of the storm sewer system or the stormwater analysis. Again, you can kind of see as this site is tilted, north is on the left. You can kind of see the existing sewer line there from the west. That's located on the bottom of the page. And then on the top right of the page is that storm sewer that flows into the area wide. So the first part of that is really they're taking that off-site from the west and they're going to pipe it around the west and south side and connect into that other line. So all that off-site runoff that's coming out of that pipe will be contained within a pipe and run around the perimeter of the building site. That'll be a 30-inch storm sewer. There will be new storm sewers installed on the east side, which will be along Algonquin Drive to kind of catch everything that drains into some inlets or drains at the northeast corner of the building and around the parking lot, and that will kind of run along the parking lot, collect the parking lot runoff, and empty into the pond. And then again, likely on the west side, it catches everything on the northwest corner and then runs along the driveway and around the side of the building and empty into the pond at the south end. And then everything along the south end of the building will empty into the pond. And that pond is both a feature, an enhancement feature, as well as storage for this site. And it's designed to accommodate the 100-year event. It won't overtop. It's large enough to accommodate that and detain it and then release it into that existing line again, as you can see on the south side. So that'll travel in that new pipe and then eventually into the area-wide basins that's part of the whole Green Hill Village development. So with that in mind, everything's in order to move this preliminary and final plat to City Council. It's consistent with the city subdivision code, and the city staff recommends approval of both preliminary and final plat.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Sturch. And we should probably note that there are two items of business, separate items of business on this particular property. The second one being the review of the site plan. So I know there's people here who are interested in this one. So at this time, we're just reviewing the plat, which is the boundaries and the things, utilities and things that Mr. Sturch has described. So if there's anybody in the audience who would like to comment on this preliminary and final plat, I'd invite you to come forward and give your name and address. We'd like to hear your comments. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission on this preliminary and final plat for a motion.
I'd like to note that I'm going to abstain from this item.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Mr. Wingert. We'll note that Mr. Wingert is abstaining on this item.
I would move to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? We have a tie.
I think I was late.
Leslie. I think everything seems pretty straightforward on the plat, so if there's no other discussion, we'll go ahead and vote. And the votes are all in, and we have all ayes and the one abstention by Wingert. Okay, our next item of business is the mixed-use zone site plan for the Green Hill Village Estates. And Mr. Sturch, you're introducing this also.
Yes, again, this was presented for initial discussion at the November 20th meeting, and at that meeting, we had a good discussion with the comments from the neighbors and the commission members, and there was a lot of good ideas and suggestions. So we kind of took this, worked with the developer and the architect and the engineer, and I've added some slides and some additional comments in here with that. So I'll go over that right now. Again, the same property at the corner of really Ashworth and Algonquin, on the west side of Algonquin. This really kind of shows what the original 2003 master plan depicted in this area with 12 condominium multifamily units, 12 buildings, 12 units per building for 144 units in this area. So just kind of want to show what that is. So what the proposed facility is in keeping with that. It's a little less density, fewer buildings in that, but it's still kind of the same proposed use in that area. So from a staff standpoint, we agree that this proposal meets the original master plan. Just going through the site plan elements, again, the proposed use is 121 units in this area. The staff report kind of reflected 124, but they adjusted that west wing, if you recall, kind of cutting that third floor off, so it did reduce that to 121 units. As you can see, there's 69 assisted living, which is located off the northwest corner of the building, 20 independent living in that two-story section at the northwest corner of the building, and then down at the south end, there's 32 memory care units. So as you can kind of see how that lays out in the building. As part of this development, we look at parking, how many parking stalls are required for the type of use, and how many people work there, and add visitor parking, and those people are coming up to see their relatives. The required parking is 91 stalls, and this facility has 104 stalls, so those meet those standards. And so just kind of going through some of those other elements in there, you've got the primary parking lot in the front there off of Algonquin. Off the driveway, there's a small monument sign. Again, the access driveway kind of circles around the south and west side to access the back area, kind of some parking for some staff members. There's a dumpster closer back there. We got internal sidewalks around this area, and so that kind of adds to the campus living and, again, the feature of the pond area at the bottom southern part of the site. Just, again, some additional features in that. The proposed building is kind of, as you look at the south end for the memory care, it's a single-story structure, and then in the middle part is your commons area. I call it the commons. You know, that's where your office space is, your general gathering space, and some cafeteria areas. That's a single-story structure. And then moving to the north, it goes up to a two-story there in the middle, and then the west, and then the three-story there in the north and in the east area. So that ranges from 24 to 48 feet height of the building there. So basically, it meets the MU district standards because the setbacks are greater than what is required. As you can see, the required setbacks are 20 feet along both street frontages, which is Lauren on the north and Algonquin on the east, and then 30 feet along the west and south side. And as you can see, those proposed setbacks on the building is listed there at 40 feet on the north, 57 on the west. South side, you have a little bit bigger, 180. And then that northwest corner of the building is approximately 37 feet from the property line there. So again, those setbacks meet the district requirements. Just wanted to add a couple of features on this slide. There were some comments about how close things are from the property line. So really on the south side, the edge of that driveway to the closest property line on the south is approximately 40 feet. And then the pond itself is roughly 80 feet from the south side. And then as you move to the west, that driveway kind of snakes a little bit closer to that west line, roughly 20 feet on that west side. But that's the area where it kind of depresses in the ground. It kind of creates that berm feature. So there's additional landscaping that kind of hides that area. So kind of go over that in a little bit here. With the landscaping plan, we look at points and open space according to the lot size, and as you can see, over half the site is identified as open space, which meets the minimum requirements. The landscaping points, again, is based on lot area, and what that is a mixture of trees and shrubs, and we throw in some street trees along there, along both street frontages, and make sure the parking lot is got some nice cover to that, so to speak, with the canopy. And so those points exceed those minimum requirements. In the picture here, I did show those plantings along the south and west side. Those are conifers, so again, those will be there really all year round in full bloom, so to speak. So they do show a lot of nice conifer pine trees and spruce trees along that area, so that'll give some nice spacing and buffering, so to speak, along that area. So the landscaping satisfies the MU district standards. Moving along with, there was a discussion about where is this berm located, how do we show that, and so I had the engineer give us some plan profiles of those drawings. So basically everything, if you remember where that pipe comes out from the west side and it heads south, everything to the north starts with a small berm, which is identified on that lower graphic, and it shows a berm about 4 feet high there along the west side of the roadway, the driveway there, and it does have some trees. There'll be some trees on that berm, and of course they'll be planted at 68 feet tall, and then eventually grow to mature height as depicted on that picture. The upper graphic really shows how the driveway depresses into that ground, and it sinks into the ground roughly 4 to 5 feet, and again, that is separated between the landscape buffer there from the property line to that driveway. So you can kind of see the neighboring structure there on the left-hand picture in the backyard, how it flows through into the driveway and onto the site to the proposed building at those two locations. So looking at building design, some of the elements that we look at in the MU district, we look at proportion of the building, which is the height and how it complements around the surrounding structures. Take a look at the roof pitch, the design of the building. Again, there's similar gables, similar pitches in that area. Pattern is kind of repeated all the way around the building with some long horizontal lines, breaks up. The materials break up, between the floors. It's the bottom end is kind of a cultured stone lower area. I'd call it a wainscot if you want to do that way. But then there's some fiber cement siding, different colors in that kind of surround the whole building. The color is white and slate blue, some gray tones in that. Makes a nice appearance in that. And the architectural features, they kind of throw out some dormers there, kind of some craftsman style. As you can see, some exposed beams in the drive-up windows, in the drive-up canopy, kind of running to the east side. You can kind of see some shed roofs coming off and some exposed awnings there. Last time, I should go back to that. The west wing in that building, we didn't have that picture last time, so it does show that two-story section there. Originally it was 3 stories, so that wing is down to 2 stories there. So you can kind of see how the site kind of falls off in that area with the slope down to the street, down to the road, and the landscaping there. Again, just moving along to the northeast side, and then the memory care is the single-story section of the building. So with the design itself, it kind of meets all those parameters we look at for this district. Another comment last time was, hey, where the utilities come from. So what they plan to do is install a loop service. As Lauren Drive is installed, water will be extended from Algonquin along Lauren Drive. And so that will kind of come off that driveway and run along the west side and south side of the driveway. And then from there, there's some hydrants there along 3 hydrants roughly on the west side, and 1 along the south side and 1 in the parking lot. Electric, gas, and communication services will be extended off the existing Algonquin. So as those final locations are determined during the building plan review process, staff and fire and CFU will work with the developer to make sure all those elements and requirements are met before we issue permits. The lighting plan was another comment. There's a number of lights throughout the site. They got 16-foot tall luminaires, so to speak. These are LED lights that are downcast. Those run along the edge of the driveway and the parking lot area. And then there's 3-foot tall pathway lights that kind of focus more in the sidewalk areas and around the building. So if you can kind of see that orange line, that really kind of denotes or shows how far those lights really distribute as it hits the ground. And as it reaches the property line along the south side and on the west side, we're looking at 0.1 to 0.3 lumens or foot candles as it reaches the ground. So it really disperses as it hits the ground. So the lighting plan really doesn't reflect to neighboring properties. It's more of a downcast, and it spreads out in that type of fashion. And then just some other elements. Again, I mentioned the monument sign there at the driveway off of Algonquin. It's a 5-foot tall monument sign, kind of pulling out those elements from the building with cultured stone in the wood and the coloring. There's a dumpster and a screen and for the dumpster and a generator out the back, and that's more of a composite deck board screening with gates 8 foot tall on that. And then from the ITE, the trip generation manual for vehicles per day, we look at the use of the building, and the proposer, what the master plan shows is the apartment at 144 units. You can kind of see each unit could generate over 6.5 trips a day, which could equate to just over 958 trips a day. As a retirement community, you're looking at less trips. Really, not everybody drives to these things. It's the workers. So that's just over 2.8 trips a day, 421 units at just 340 trips. So a lot of those trips really be focused at your staff time changes. And again, some people may drive, but mostly they're there for visitor parking. So that's kind of projected traffic generation coming in and out of the site on a day. So with that, we want to recommend approval of the site plan for this retirement building based on the recommendations. Make sure they conform with staff recommendations and comments from the Planning and Zoning Commission. Move this to the council.
Great, thank you, Mr. Sturch. Would the applicant like to add anything further at this time? Okay. I don't invite anybody in the public who would like to address the commission on this item to please come forward and give your name and address.
Good evening. I'm Robin Frost from 4718 Addison Drive. Thank you so much for your allowing time for public comments on this, and thanks to all of the staff and the developer for providing some clarification on this meeting. I want to say that I left the last meeting a little uncertain of my next steps. While I'm not entirely happy about the proposed senior living facility adjacent to our property, I recognize the developer was well within their rights to build the proposed facility in this area. I also recognize that the building proposed is not the worst thing that could be built on this land. However, I do want to add a little perspective for your consideration. When we purchased our home 2 years ago, in December of 2017, at that time we understood the property behind us would be single-family homes. The only master plan I've seen of our neighborhood, and the one that's still circulated when we're electing new HOA officers, shows what appear to be single-family homes or perhaps twin homes on this property. City staff members have repeatedly referenced the 12 plexes that they say were originally proposed for this property, but that came as news to me and many of our other neighbors during the past few months. This begs the question, where is the miscommunication? Depending on who you asked just a few months ago, you would likely have received several different responses about what the plans were for the property in question. With so much confusion, my question is simply what's being done to clearly communicate development plans with our citizens. I also came away from the last meeting wondering, what about us? The developer has shown willingness to listen to neighbors and to make adjustments to their plan, which we greatly appreciate, but we're still left with a commercial building in our backyards and putting up with a potential 2-year construction period estimated that will at least temporarily, perhaps permanently reduce our property values, degrade our views, cause noise, eyesores, dust, and greatly impact our outdoor lifestyles, at least during construction. The developer and management company surely plan to make money on the facility or they wouldn't be building it. Meanwhile, nearby residents are left to deal with it and have no opportunity to capitalize on the plans. For these reasons, I developed the following list of ideas that would perhaps lessen the blow for some nearby homeowners. Number 1, can the developer cover homeowners association expenses for the adjacent residential properties for the duration of construction? That's $100 per year per residence. Could the developer be asked to provide exterior house washing services to those that desire it after peak construction periods? Number 3, could the developer be expected to pay Green Hill Village Homeowners Association some negotiated rate? This seems reasonable since the water runoff from the site will eventually end up in one of the drainage ponds, which has to be maintained by the HOA. Number 4, can this commission or the city council or a county group facilitate some kind of a tax credit or adjustment for owners of these adjacent properties? We know our properties will be less desirable to purchase during the construction phase and perhaps after, so our resale values will decrease. Number 5, could the developer complete the perimeter landscaping and plantings early in the project to keep the dust and visual eyesore to a minimum? Number 6, in addition to the landscaping they've proposed, could the developer cover the cost of perhaps 1 tree per property to be planted on the adjacent homeowners' properties, if so desired, for additional screening? Finally, I think it's reasonable to request any repairs to adjacent lawns and yards and underlying infrastructure that may occur during the construction phase due to equipment, soil, or other issues. Not being an expert on this subject, I realize there may be better ideas, but I'll rely on your expertise to make those suggestions. The bottom line is we're just looking for a few concessions that will help maintain our quality of life for the short term as well as the long term. I invite ideas from yourselves, from the developer, the property management company, and other neighborhood residents for further consideration. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Robin. A couple of your items, I think I can give you an answer right away. The tax credit thing we have nothing to do with that here at the commission level for that request, and I'm sure any damaged property would be repaired by the developer. But I don't know if the applicant wants to comment on any of those thoughts. Name and address, please.
Jacob Wolfgang, 4720 40th Street, Des Moines, Iowa, 50310. I think the concerns of the neighbors are well noted. I think obviously we'll be required to put together a SWIP plan as part of the permit approval process, which would prevent us from, creating kind of water runoff or dirt, soil loss, or dirtying up the adjacent streets. Would be responsible for keeping those clean. Certainly any damage done to adjacent property would be our responsibility to repair. So those are all within the scope of things that we can control. I didn't make the entire list out, but I don't. Paying the homeowners association fees seems a little bit unnecessarily overly burdensome on our property. I think more good will be done than bad in handling the way that we care for the stormwater runoff that's untreated on the site currently. There will certainly be a lot of benefit to the neighbors to the south I've been talking to that are along the southern side on Ashworth. We get a lot of flooding on their property now with the water being untreated. So being able to pick it up from the north in the swale, in the retention, and carry it on through, channel it through to the ponds to the south, I think will benefit everybody, and less water will run off into the ponds to the south since we're retaining a lot of water on our site already.
Great, thank you. David or Aaron, the question on the master plan, has there ever been single family shown on that property on the master plan? It seems like there was, Robin seemed to indicate that there's some confusion that people believe that was single family on that property.
The master plan has been adjusted from time to time, specifically along the north side of that whole development along Green Hill Road,
Right.
and recently along the north side of Lauren Drive extension. But this 8-acre parcel kind of remained as is from the 2003 plan.
That's okay. That's what I was thinking, but I'm not sure where the confusion came from, because I don't recall it ever showing single family on this particular parcel.
I think quite a few of the changes over the years were to add more single-family.
Right. Right, yeah, because we took over there on the east side, there was a whole section that was multifamily that got changed to single family. And then the portion like you're talking to the north, we've had quite a few discussions on, obviously.
I would like to add, there's a comment about the maintenance of the stormwater area-wide detention basins. As this property is developed, they do become part of that maintenance or repair of those basins, because it's tied to the whole Green Hill Village area. So as subdivisions and phases are added to that, it's just added to that whole thing. So,
All right, they're paying their portion of it then. Okay. Anyone else who would like to comment on, please come forward and give your name and address.
Hi, I'm Debbie Lee at 1415 Ashworth Drive. We were here 2 weeks ago, I believe it was, and that's the first that we had a chance to address all of you. I am not totally opposed to the project, but I am concerned about parts of the project. I also know bottom line, and I appreciate some of the work that has been done to help alleviate some of our problems. I appreciate that, and I believe that the design of the buildings will be adequate and just fine. I also know bottom line, I'm probably not going to change anything. So it's a done deal, and I understand that. So I do have, however, a couple requests. If I'm concerned, I have concerns or have complaints, I believe in being positively problem-oriented, problem-solution-oriented. So after thinking about this, the last time we were here, I thought, what could we recommend, my husband and I? So there are two recommendations that we want to ask for. Again, I don't know if this could be done. I think it could be. A lot of things can be done if you have the will to do it and the resources. So one of them, our biggest concern is the access drive. We actually went outside and measured from our property where the gentleman before had said it would be so many feet. And we looked at that. It's extremely close to our home. And so I have a lot of problem with the access drive. So I'm going to make a request that the access drive be moved from the south side of the water basin retention area to the north side of it. That puts the access road between the building that will be developed and the water basin. That moves the access road and that traffic much further away from our homes along that south side, and a little bit on the west, but not as much. So that's one request that I would make. The second request, we have huge concern with where that main entrance is to the parking lot for the development and where it is in proximity to the park. That is a disaster waiting to happen. It's a huge safety issue for our kids and our families there. We're talking about semis coming into that area. We're talking about other delivery trucks. We're talking about people moving in and moving out, which is, again, large traffic. So I'm suggesting that drive be moved further north, away from the park area. We think that there's going to be an inordinate amount of traffic added to these two-lane streets, and the number of people that are using the park. We think if that main entrance can be moved further north, in that parking lot area, it puts that entry away from right there at the park. It's still close to the park, but it's not right at the park. Plus, if we have people parking there, I don't even know how semis could turn in there. I mean, honestly, I just don't know how big trucks could even turn into that if there's parking and people are parked there. So we've been there. We walk our dog along that area, and we watch families get out of their cars. We watch children jump out of the car. You know, hopefully it's always on the sidewalk side, but it isn't always. And so again, as a huge safety issue for the city as a whole, if that basic larger entry to the parking lot could be moved further north, I think that would help. I don't think it would alleviate everything, but it would help, I believe. So those are my two requests, is moving that access road on the other side of the water basin and then moving the entry to that. The other questions I'm wondering about are on that access drive, if it's not going to be moved, if it can't be moved further away, is it the elevation of that road? Will it stay on a lower elevation or will it be built up? Because if the traffic is coming along that road, those lights will shine right into our windows, depending on the elevation. If the elevation stays lower at the end, at the level that it is now, at the elevation it is now, it will go into our it will go into our basement windows, not directly into our bedroom. So I'm wondering about the elevation of that access road. The other thing I'm wondering about, we talked about the lighting, and I'm very concerned about light pollution. And so we talked about the lights would be, 16 foot high, that they are facing down. That's very positive. That the perimeter where that light ends up down on the ground is not beyond the area of the property. And that's great. But when you have lights up in the air 16 feet, we still will see those lights. And so they will still shine. And so I'm wondering about if those can be lowered, 2 to 3 feet above the ground. Again, if that elevation of that road is lower, it depends on, the elevation of the road. Those are just some things that we're a little concerned about. The other thing I just have a question about, if the access road is one way, if it's one way going around one way, or if it's going to be two-way traffic. And then one of the persons, I believe she is from the company that is actually developing this or building this or owns it, she indicated there wouldn't be that much traffic through that access drive. Well, there will be. And I got to thinking about that. At first blush, I just accept what people say. Why wouldn't you trust them? Why wouldn't I trust anything you would say? But then on second thought, I think, wait a minute, let's backtrack that a minute. So I'm thinking about on that access drive, she mentioned there would be 2 semis coming through there each week. That doesn't then include on top of that, start with the semis, then you're going to have other delivery trucks, you're going to have garbage pickup, you're going to have, there are employee parking spots there, and if I could read that right, I believe there's at least 6 in 2 areas. That's 12 employee parking spots. If you have 3 different sets of employees coming through, you have, the different, first a set for 8 hours, then another set, the different shifts. That's 36 cars, just minimum right there, if there are 12 people parking on the other side coming through that. I don't know, and nobody would know, how many people using the parking lot would go out that way. We don't know that. And then we have people moving in and out. Initially, that's more than 100 units. I don't remember exactly how many that is, but that puts a significant amount of traffic on the road. So if you look at that and saying, well, there's only 2 semis a week, that doesn't embrace the comprehensiveness of the traffic on that road. So we're increasing the traffic on Ashworth, which is in front of our home. And now we're building a road behind our home and increasing, and lots of traffic there. So technically, we're going to be between 2 streets fairly close together. I have a concern about that. So if the access road, again, can be moved to the other side of that water basin, that would be helpful. The other thing I need to bring up that I thought about, there was a comment made last time that was that it would be better in some sense, this is my interpretation, that this is better to have, there'd be less traffic there than having condominiums there or apartments. I don't think that's necessarily true. I got to thinking about that as well. And I thought if, I looked around at other apartment buildings. I looked at the apartment buildings down on the end of Ashworth. I didn't see an access road behind there. And so I thought, you know what? And there wouldn't be as many people coming in and out of a place where there's apartments or condominiums as there will be in a facility such as this. There wouldn't be the traffic there. There might be more people living in an apartment building, but the traffic wouldn't be there. There would be garbage trucks coming to pick up garbage, but there wouldn't be semis delivering. There wouldn't be other deliveries being made. There wouldn't be an access road around it necessarily. So I'm not sure that that's a comment that rang true for us in the long run. I would prefer single-family homes, but that was not zoned for that. I would prefer condominiums or apartments to this development. Now, looking at me, I may move into that development after it's built. So, I'm not opposed to it, but I am opposed to the access drive. That is very problematic for us. And I'm opposed to what looks like might be safety issues with the park. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Anyone else who would like to comment on this, please come forward and give your name and address.
I'm Nalin Gunasekara. I live on 1518 Athens Court. Yeah, like the others before me, I think I'd like to appreciate the efforts made by the developer in trying to accommodate the concerns about this, the residents in the area. I guess I have a specific point with respect to the foliage and the trees that are being planted. It's a great idea, but if I heard the person right correctly, they are planning to plant like 6-foot tall trees. And from experience, I can tell you that it takes a heck of a long time for them to grow to the required level to shield. And for the increased in cost of literally like a couple of $100, because I have also bought big trees, you can actually provide an instant screen to the neighbors, and that could help to alleviate even the psychological trauma of having these new buildings come up. So I would strongly urge the developers to consider actually planting trees and making the foliage a reality rather than having to wait like a decade or more for the trees to grow. Yeah, thanks. That's my.
Thank you. Anyone else who would like to make a comment? Please come forward and give your name and address. The applicant, you want to address any of these other items, or staff have a?
Yeah, we had looked at, to Debbie's point, we had looked at multiple ways of doing the service drive. It's just a necessary of the function of the building. And this was the spot that would keep it the furthest from the neighbors and from the building. Our residents don't want the service drive right up against their apartment home either. And to address the traffic, there will be 2 semi-trucks. That was Ann's point last time we were here. And she represents Ecumen, the management company that run the facility. So 2 deliveries of food per week in semi-trucks. Everything else will come in smaller box trucks. Deliveries and folks that move in will move in through that back service drive as well. But she referenced 2 semi-trucks just to speak to the nature of large truck traffic that was coming through there. Mr. Sturch pointed out that the traffic in general is significantly less than a multifamily development. Right. And I'd even question the 2.6 or whatever the trips per day were for our folks. Most of them don't drive. They just don't. And they're living in a facility like this because they need assistance with everyday things. And so driving is one of the first things that goes. So we provide transportation for these folks, but they typically don't drive. I don't know what other.
Is that parking on the west side? That's the primary employee parking. Is that the intention, or?
That will be employee parking. Yeah, there's still not enough back there for all of the staff. They'll be parking up front as well.
Right, so it'd be a combination of on the east and west sides then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The traffic being 2-way was another question Debbie had. It won't be like a controlled road. But I foresee traffic coming in from Lauren Drive to the north and looping out and exiting. It'll just be there is enough to do a full turnaround, I believe. So there might be, it'll be a function of, when they bring deliveries, whatever's easiest, they'll just continue to keep doing that. I doubt that they'll want to drive all the way around if they don't have to.
It's 2-way traffic on that drive, is that correct? Or is
it could be. It's not a controlled road. There's no
right.
Signage.
You're not controlling it to be 1-way traffic.
No,
okay.
Right.
I think that was one of the questions too.
Right.
The move for the main entrance was another question.
Yeah, there's several curb cuts already there on Algonquin. We could potentially look at that. I don't yet understand if there are. if it's any safer moving that 20 feet north or 20 feet south, or if there's any undue harm in where it is now. I don't understand if there would be a concern there safety-wise. I think we do recognize that the park has been extremely popular, and when I came up here in September, we had another neighborhood meeting. They were parked on both sides of the road up and down Algonquin, essentially making that a one-lane road, and that became a safety concern, obviously. Something needs to be done to address the parking there. Hopefully, with us over-parking our site, naturally people will park on our property to go over to the park. We understand that when there's space available, we're happy to let them do that. But I think that
It does look like from this one area they'll have up there, there's a curb cut there already, pretty much right in that location already.
yeah.
There actually, I believe, is a curb cut further north as well.
Yeah, there's two of them there.
Yes, there is.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nick Bettis, Action Consultant, 60 East Core Street, Iowa City, Iowa. I just wanted to add another information on the access point. In the design, we did do several iterations. One of them we did have further north, trying to utilize that existing curb cut that's just north of where we currently have it. And in doing that, we were trying to balance what we've heard from the neighbors previously as far as having parking too close or parking facing towards the headlights facing towards the adjacent properties. So we took that into account, because if we moved it further north and trying to keep the additional or keep the parking that we have accounted for, our options were to try to put just additional parking on the west side, which we don't have a lot of room for, or swap it over onto the south side of where that drive would be to the north. And that doesn't make it as efficient for parking, and it would lend itself to potentially having to have headlights facing towards the adjacent properties. So we thought, given the input that we had, that this was a good option for that.
Okay, thanks, Nick. Anybody else who would like to comment on this, please come forward and give your name and address.
So, Debbie Lee, 1415 Ashworth Road. So I just want to make sure that I understand this clearly about the access drive, that I asked if it could be moved on the other side of the water basin. And part of the reasoning for that not to be moved is because of the residents in the building would not like that, or that would not be desirable. If I understood that correctly.
Yeah, I think so, because I mean, if they swap that, then the road's got to be right up beside the building.
Right.
Yeah.
So personally, just to let you know, I would prefer it to be up next to that building than right behind my house and next to my building. And so that's not logic. That's not a logical argument for me. Thank you.
Anyone else who would like to make a comment? Yep, seeing none, I will close the public comment and bring it back to the commission for motion or discussion.
I'll abstain from this item too.
And note that Wingert is abstaining from this item.
Well, I'd first like to thank the developer for being so prompt with the updated drawings and the cross-sections of the road. That's really helpful. And to staff for giving us those traffic estimates. They make sense. With that all said, the traffic, even if it is a third of what it might be with apartments, I think it's still of interest with that park there. Now, obviously, the park entrance is biased towards the east on Algonquin, so not really towards the, or I guess Ashworth, sorry, and not so much towards Algonquin. So that makes it less of an issue, to me anyway. But what would the process be for recommending some adjustment to the signage or the parking situation there? This is kind of a staff question. What would the process be for petitioning that?
Are you asking about parking along the public right-of-way
Yeah, in
issue?
front of that intersection where the southern entrance to the access road.
I mean, city staff could take a look at that if it becomes an issue. Of course, we would allow parking alongside the road where it's feasible to do so, but if there becomes a safety issue, of course, we would take a look at that.
Okay, so just to be clear, the process would be to leave the parking as it's designed currently, or the signage as it is currently, and then evaluate it later on an as-needed sort of basis.
Yeah, that's typically how David, you want to comment on that?
Yeah, from time to time, we take comments or petitions from the public for on-street parking. And so it's a process that we run through tech review and run around staff. And the street, I believe, is 31 foot, so it does have two-sided parking. It is somewhat of a calmer, so to speak, but as this site develops in any way, you know, we would probably look at the future growth of this area and if there's any ways to look at the on-street parking. So there's a process. The process goes to council. It doesn't come to Planning and Zoning Commission. It goes to council since it's more of a ordinance type for moving the parking on or off the street.
Okay, I think that's helpful.
David makes a good point to make there, is that on-street parking tends to calm the traffic, not make it worse. So if you take parking off the street and you have a 31-foot wide street, excuse me, I have a cold. If you take that off the street, it does invite speeding along the street. So in that sense, I think a lot of misunderstanding about what the on-street parking does to the traffic volume and the speeds along the street.
And Algonquin, if I can spit that out, is parking on two-sided, both sides, David, is that what you said? Yeah. Okay.
So I don't see that the traffic calming issue is what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is trying to get a semi in and out of that entrance with cars parked on both sides of that street with kids getting in and out of it. That's what I'm concerned about. I'm not worried about traffic calming here more than I am concerned about two-sided parking and semis coming in and out of that entrance and cars. That seems to be a problem, will be a problem. I understand that the access road, putting it against the building does not make sense at all. It's for the developer to decide where that road access goes and for the benefit of his client or his customers or patients, whatever. Plus, you have that retention basin that has to collect water, and that doesn't make sense to put it in a different spot, in my opinion, at all. I would like to see us maybe move the entrance further north if there's any possibility at all.
I'd like to add to the entrance part. I don't see any I don't see any considerable advantage to only moving it, say, 20 or 30 feet. But with that said, if this were developed, say, as single-family residential, the placement of that road would be within 30 to 50 feet of where it is currently. And where that road is currently, there would be people's decks and the backs of people's houses lined along the backs of all the houses on Ashworth and I guess Lauren it is. So as far as traffic, whether it's people traffic or car traffic or whatever, the immediately abutting view seems less disruptive. And then as far as the traffic goes from that road, I just don't see where, without a major abandonment of the plans, I don't see where a minor adjustment to the position of that entrance makes a difference. My bigger concern, as Leanne articulated a little bit better, was just keeping the area immediately on Algonquin clear.
Yeah, it's certainly something we should be paying attention to and make sure that all works well with the development.
Other than that, I don't think it's what anybody might have expected on that piece of land, but the process seems very conscientious, and the building looks great, and a lot of effort and diligence, you can tell, went into this. I would make a motion to approve.
I'd second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? I would just make it, I keep looking at that access, or the access drive off of Algonquin, and the desire to move that north, and I can see that, but I also see the difficulty in actually accomplishing that by the developer, because they still got to be able to get a truck through that parking lot and out to the north. And not seeing a real practical way to do that, but that would be something that I think would be worth studying some more. The developer would at least, take another go at that. I think it would be worthy, but I have a hard time denying the project based on that one item. It's kind of where I sit, I guess. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and vote. And our votes are in. We have all ayes and Wingert's abstention, so that motion carries. That goes on to the city council then. At what's the timing look like that on that, David?
Looking at possibility of running this to council a week from Monday, which would be December 16th.
So all the interested parties, it looks likely the 16th of December to the city council, so.
Whenever it is on council, a notice will be sent out to the property owners.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Sturch. That concludes our old business for tonight. We have one item of new business, and that is the final plat for the terraces at West Glen, first edition. And Mr. Sturch, you're up again.
Thank you. Yeah, this is first addition to the terraces development there with New Aldea out at the corner of Union Road and West 12th Street. As you can see, the location map, we did some zoning and preliminary plating here earlier this year for the RP and the development of this new campus for New Aldea. So just kind of running through the preliminary plat, the final plat there. It's located really along the southwest corner of the 40-acre parcel, the original 40-acre parcel. As you can see, the plat is 7.9 acres. Tract A is the public streets, and that's really an extension of Sonoma Drive there off of Union Road. It's kind of right across the street from the existing street that goes into Wild Horse, so that will be extended to the east, and then really kind of wrap around to the south and then heading over back to the east for Kegel Crossing. And then there's another roadway that basically extends to the southern edge of the property there. So that will be a future connection as that everything to the south and east develops. But looking at one lot development there, and along with the Tract B, which is identified for stormwater detention on this for the development. So all the utility easements are identified along the street frontages and around the outside edge of each lot and along the right-of-ways. These would be 31-foot wide streets as they go in. Just looking at the proposed development, and this is similar to what the concept plan was approved based on the RP zoning that when we went through that. So it's identified for single unit and for 2-unit dwellings there along the south side of Kegel's Crossing. So the idea is the developer wants to get the improvements or I think the underground, they're grading the site right now. They're working on some underground work now, and I think they'll want to kind of wrap that up here in the springtime and start working on those patio homes there identified. So just looking at kind of the layout for the stormwater, there's an existing pipe that kind of runs from the west off under Union Road that collects all the ponding and the stormwater from the Wild Horse addition on the west side. So it kind of releases into this lot and it flows kind of along the south edge of that area. So really that shaded area is identified as a swaled easement. So that area will be kind of to allow that stormwater to pass through there. There's existing proposed storm sewers in the street areas, so that will collect the runoff there and then empty into Tract B. And again, that stormwater from the west will kind of run along that. And so that'll be a kind of a swaled area, I think, to allow that water to go through, something that the property owner can mow and maintain, and it's an easy way to do that. So everything will empty into that tract, basically fill up and then release at a controlled rate into that drainage area along for the University branch of Dry Run Creek. So the stormwater drainage for this phase and the entire development, to speak of, meets and exceeds our ordinance requirements. So with that in mind, fairly straightforward plat. The West Glen First Edition is consistent with the subdivision code and the preliminary plat, as well as what they want to do with the concept. So I want to recommend approval of the plat.
Great, thank you, Mr. Sturch. The applicant like to make any comments? If so, I would invite anybody here tonight who would like to make a comment on this final plat, come forward and give your name and address.
Hello, I'm Mike Gersh at 1608 Union Road. This addition is completely along my whole property line, probably near to 1,200 feet. And I have a concern and a question. One thing that's happened so far that I don't think helped me any was the hundreds of loads of dirt that was hauled in to build this area up. It actually makes my ground now seem like it's down in a hole. And so it doesn't look as pleasing as before. And then, I don't know if you're aware of all that dirt that was hauled in. Secondly is this 50-foot drainage ditch. That was dug out. I mean, there was always water flowing through there, especially recently when the tiling wasn't maintained. But years ago, it was actually farmed and kept dry. But now there's water running through there all the time, and I can't see how that will be kept dry and mowed. And I'm concerned because it's quite a deep ditch, dug since this was worked on. And so I just hope there's a way to keep that dry most of the time and mowed. And then the tract that collects the water, tract B or whatever you called it, how will that look when wet seasons, dry seasons? I know we'll have water in when it rains, but how will it look when it's dry? I want it to not be collecting full of weeds and trees growing up and stuff like that. So that's all the concerns. I appreciate everything. I'm not against the project. And thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Would the applicant representative want to comment on a couple of those questions?
John Biederman, civil engineer with Fairgram, 128 South Vine Street, West Union. On the waterway along the south end, yeah, we know there's water that continually runs through there. It comes probably fed from some tile lines up above. We may add a tile line kind of to pick up some of that low flow, once we get it all shaped and get it developed. So the goal would be to make it as maintainable as possible, as attractive as possible. It's very close to the backyards of those homes. So, I mean, it's in our best interest to make sure that it looks good. Detention basin, the question on upkeep, trees, whatever, that's a common issue with detention basins. You see that all over. Some of them look pretty rough, and then others that get maintained look pretty decent. So I know the owner definitely wants this to be not an eyesore. It's right in the middle of their development. I'm sure they're going to do everything they can to, to keep that mowed, keep vegetation under control, keep, volunteer trees out, and just make it look good. That's just what needs to happen with where it is in the rest of the proposed development.
So the intention for Track B is that it's a regularly mowed area?
Yeah, mowed, or at least it's going to have, we're going to have some prairie grasses or, some native plantings throughout, something of that type, but not just volunteer trees, weeds, things like that will not happen. Okay?
Thank you. Anyone else? Please come forward and give your name and address.
Ron Bach, 1602 Rocky Ridge Road. I only have one minor concern. The weeds in the ditch on Union Road has not been taken care of at all this year. They're probably 4 to 5 feet higher than Union Road. So when I'm looking out my back windows, all I'm seeing are weeds. Everything else they've been doing over there, cleaning Union Road off with the dirt and stuff, they're doing a great job. I just have some concern about that ditch, and then if they don't do anything there, is that what that waterway is going to be like going all the way down through there that I'm going to see? I know a lot of places they line them with, with rock, big rock, and then they have the grass come up. I don't know if that would work, but I have a little concern when he said that the owners would be maintaining that land behind their houses. Well, some of these people are fairly old. Are they mowing it, or is there somebody hired to come in and take care of these waterways that can't be mowed by the owner of the single dwelling home or the patio home? So, thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
Yeah, the plan is to have a mowing service. It's not up to the individual property owner, so maybe John can answer that, but the idea is to keep the maintenance and the snow removal under one person, so to speak, from New Aldea.
Yeah, no, David's absolutely correct. The maintenance will not be by the individual residents. It'll be as a group by New Aldea. And then just to clarify on the Union Road ditch area, yeah, it looks rough. It's been under construction, not that the ditch has, but just the area. I don't know who mowed it in the past or what happened, but anyway, in the future, there is a trail proposed in that easterly right-of-way of Union Road, which will actually build that ditch up. There's still going to be a little bit of a swale, but it's going to not be as much of a ditch. So the trail will be in there. It'll be much more aesthetically pleasing, I would say, than just what the ditch is now. So once we get that built, and that should be probably next year, that ditch area right away is going to start looking a lot better.
Thank you, John. Any further comments? Anybody else would like to comment or question? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission for an action of some sort.
Motion to approve.
It's been moved to approve. Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion, further discussion? I think the owners have addressed the issues appropriately, and it seems like pretty straightforward to me, so. Any further comment? Let's go ahead and vote. And we have all eyes on that, so that passes. And what's the schedule look like for this moving on?
Working with the developer to get this to council here on December 16th.
Okay, great. That concludes all of our regular business for this evening. Is there any commission updates
I don't have anything for you tonight, other than just noting that you'd have your election of officers at your next meeting. Now, we're not certain that there will be a meeting, another meeting in December. We're not aware of any items that we have pending, but we will
Our next meeting
certainly
may
let
be
you
in
know whether the meeting is canceled or not. But the election of officers will be on the agenda for the next meeting.
Great, okay. Yeah, thank you, Ms. Howard. I would entertain a motion to adjourn. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much.